Ta-da! I'm done. This is Diane, and I have finished 5 Little Golden Book Christmas journals. So I'm going to do them in several videos because they represent 3 different design team projects. So let's start with 2 that are kind of the same. It's called Christmas Carols. They are both golden books, illustrated by Corinne Malvern, but the covers are different. This one is more vintage, and these are both spoken for. This customer wanted a hidden spine, so I just used white cotton fabric and then put this beautiful lace on the spine. And there are no stitches because it's a hidden spine. And then I added this vintage lace along the edges. And look at that beautiful illustration on the front. There are 3 signatures in all of these golden books. I created a pocket here with, I used some of this paper, probably in every book. Old World Winter from the Paper Studio at Hobby Lobby. Beautiful, beautiful papers. And then this was a vintage card, and I inserted this Tsunami Rose ephemera piece inside, but you can take that out and put a photograph in there if you'd like. So I should have told you what design team project this is for. It's for Studio 28E, and the kit that I'm using is Retro Red Vintage Christmas. I think it's got all those words in it. I might have it in the wrong order. But this is part of that kit. She gives you a lot of pages plus a lot of pieces to cut out. So it's like the pages and the ephemera add-on, but all in one kit. And there's a vintage current Christmas postcard. And this is just a scrap of the music paper. Since this is a book about Christmas carols, I included this. This is also from that Hobby Lobby book of paper. I did some stenciling and a little light stamping there. And here's the first page. Now, in all of these books, except for this one, I used Gail's technique for including the full pages without cutting them or folding them. And I will link her video below on how to do that, but this book was too fragile. It's the oldest of the golden books that I used, and I couldn't fold the pages because it made them crack. I couldn't fold the edges like the technique shows. So I had to cut the pages and then put them together with just strips of paper. Also, because they're Christmas carols, I did not worry about keeping them in order. It's not a story. So there are pages from the book in each of the 3 signatures. This is part of the Tsunami Rose Christmas ephemera kit. And this is one of the tags that I made, and I have a video from making those tags. This is one of the cutout pieces from the Studio 28E. This is also from that kit. And here is a page from a Christmas record book for keeping track of your Christmas from year to year. I found that book at a Salvation Army or something. Here's one of the, I'm trying to remember the name of the crafter who came up with this flip. But anyway, you've seen this before, and I've decorated it with a piece of lace and a little used Christmas stamp. The other customer who's getting the other Christmas Carol book, this one requested the hidden spine. The other one liked a lot of vintage, or maybe it was this one. Anyway, one of them wanted vintage and children's book pages, so they both contain all of those things. So here is just a vintage store receipt from a hardware store. This is from Studio 28E, one of those retro images. A fabric flip. This is from a vintage table runner right there. Here's from a little book that had a Christmas card list where you would write down who you sent and received cards to and from. And the tabs, there's a fabric tab in each signature, and there's a charm hanging from each tab. Here's a little cluster thing that I made on video, and it's a little tuck spot there. Some stamping up here. Here's the little Rand McNally, I think, or Whitman, little Christmas Carol book. And I have it tied in the center with some beads hanging down. This is a vintage postcard. And on the paper clip I just tied some of this. It's wired, but I pulled the wire out, and I got this from my friend's living room when I went shopping in her living room. This is a little belly band. There's some velvet ribbon on there, and this is just a little Christmas seal. I punched out a white circle and adhered it to that. Glued it halfway on, and then this is from the kit. I love Corinne Malvern's illustrations of little children. And then I use pages from this vintage Christmas book about Santa and the elves, and you'll see that in several of these golden books. But these ladies wanted vintage children's books, so there are pieces of that in here. And then this is one of the napkin decoupaged tags that I made with cards, manila file folder. And then here we have a postcard cut from authentic paper, and this vintage Christmas card that I got at a flea market. I used a lot of Christmas cards and postcards in these journals. Second signature has a Christmas recipe card. There's lots of room for writing on there. This vintage trim on the edge of the paper. Some stenciling and stamping. I used these coasters. They had a waxy back on them because they are coasters. They're vintage, but the waxy back wouldn't glue down. This one I actually was able to peel off. The other ones I ended up sewing on, but I did not want to sew through this fragile paper. These are tickets, and I can't remember which shop I got them from. It's a digital printout. Here's another Christmas card there. And in this flip, there's, this is not a vintage gift tag. It's from last year. And then this is a bridge tally. And then this is a vintage Christmas package decoration, a poinsettia foiled. I just put some pom-pom trim at the bottom of this. This is one of the Tsunami Rose images. And I think all of these are Tsunami Rose. And then this is from Authentique. The papers from this digital kit from Studio 28E are so cute. Fabric that Perrette sent me, and some eyelet. And some more beads down here. There's another bridge tally. And I used this little printable along with my cluster to make a tuck spot there. And this little envelope is from the kit. This is a piece of vintage writing paper. Vintage tablecloth here with a deer and a snowflake. Another vintage receipt from Meredith Bottling Works in Towanda, Pennsylvania. And then this large pocket has another vintage card with a flocked frame around it, and it has this sheer sheet here. It had come out, so I glued it on again. Beautiful lacy alterations tag. I made them on video too. This is the last signature, I think. Yeah. Here is from that vintage children's book. I cut out the stall for the deer. This one is Comet, and I backed him with craft cardstock, and you can write on the back of him. This is cut from that book. Here's a piece of a Christmas textile. It's nubby. Got it at a flea market. It's vintage. Bridge score pad here, and a little charm. Some charms here, or beads. And I used a yo-yo here as the stopper for that tag. Both of these pieces are from the Studio 28E kit. Some owl fabric someone had sent me. Another flip, Rita Donnelly flip, that's what they are. This is a vintage foil piece. It says 25. It was for a 25th wedding anniversary, but I used it as December 25th. And then a little piece of vintage doily here. And a vintage gift tag, and a playing card with one of my little brown envelopes, and a little tag in there. I think I still have maybe one set of those little brown envelopes left in my shop. And another vintage booklet. It's a Christmas Carol book. So that's Christmas Carols book number 1 for Paula. And then this one is also spoken for. Again, it has the same lace, and I used this vintage crocheted trim with velvet threaded through it. And I'll go through this one more quickly. It has much of the same elements, but I'll show you. This is a vintage postcard. I'll show you the vintage stuff that's new. I mean, that's different from the other book. This pocket covered up where you would write your name, so I added this little ticket that came from authentic paper. A vintage Christmas postcard. The vintage receipt again. This is from a vintage Christmas Carol book. I added some fiber and vintage lace here. This is from a vintage tablecloth. This one just has ledger sewn to the back of it. This one I didn't leave the strings long enough to tie beads, so I just tied them in a bow. And this is a vintage Christmas card. Linda, I think you wanted this card and I couldn't find it. I think this might be the one you wanted, but I found it. So it looks like a bookshelf, and the books on it are Silent Night, Jolly Old St. Nicholas. Aren't they so cute? And I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day. This is an awesome card. No wonder you wanted it. I hope this is the one you wanted. So I attached it to this page with this paper clip. A little vintage form. This has a sheer ribbon. Probably can't see it, but it's pleated up there in a little piece of vintage blue trim. A bridge score pad in the recipe card again. A cutout from the kit. Well, it's got a thread attached to something. There. This has a little bingo printable and, just slipped down in there, a little vintage ticket. This is a little pocket that came with the kit, I believe. Vintage tablecloth again. This is cut from the paper from the kit. I think this is from Tsunami Rose. This one I added this flashcard printable from the old design shop to this little cluster. A vintage gift tag, vintage sticker or gift seal. This is vintage wrapping paper that I adhered to cardstock. I punched it out as a tag shape. This is the decoupage napkin card. A vintage Christmas card. And there's a piece of cheesecloth and a little bit of vintage doily there. Sorry for bumping the camera. My arms are wrapped around it. And this one is an envelope. I left it open. This little thing is punched from a Norman Rockwell book. It was at the top of a page. It's an elf giving directions, it looks like. Vintage tablecloth. This is a vintage German scrap that was sent to me. I think Perio sent it to me from Germany. And I gave it up. And there's a little clear bead there. Whoops. And another yo-yo. Christmas stamp up here. And some Christmas cards. Just a little one. And a postcard. This one, 19. I see a 1, but I can't see what the other, but it's from the 1910s. And again, an envelope. This is one of the coasters, and I sewed this one on. This is a snowman stamp image that I painted a little bit with my twinkling H2Os. This is one of the larger images from Tsunami Rose, but I did have to trim it down because it got bent as the book folded, so the edge got bent, so I just trimmed it down so it would fit better. Put some teal rickrack down the sides edges there. So those are my design team project for Studio 28E, and I'll be back with the next journal in just a moment.